My name is Audrey Collins. I'm 45 years old. At 11:32 on a Tuesday morning in January, a jeweler called me and asked why my late husband's watch was being resized for my brother. Not repaired, not cleaned, not appraised, resized for my brother's wrist. I was standing in the frozen food aisle at Bennett's Market, holding a bag of peas in one hand and my phone in the other, staring at the glass doors as if the answer might be reflected somewhere between frozen waffles and chicken tenders. "Mrs. Collins," the jeweler said gently, "I'm sorry to bother you, but this is Martin Hale from Hale & Sons Jewelers downtown. I have a watch here with an inscription that made me think I should call before proceeding." My mouth went dry. "What inscription?" There was a pause. Then he read it. "To Audrey. Every second was ours. Daniel." The bag of peas slipped from my hand and hit the floor. Daniel, my husband, my Daniel, dead for 11 months, 3 weeks, and 4 days. Gone from a brain aneurysm so sudden that I still sometimes heard his truck in the driveway and turned toward the window before remembering the world had split. The watch was his 40th birthday watch. A stainless steel Omega with a blue face and a scratch near the clasp from the time he fixed the back gate and refused to take it off because he said, "A man should be able to do honest work in a good watch." I had saved for 14 months to buy it for him. He had worn it to our anniversary dinner, to our niece's graduation, to my company holiday party, to Sunday breakfast, and to the hospital the morning he died because he had put it on without thinking, the way people do when they believe they are coming home. After the funeral, I had placed it in the top drawer of his dresser, wrapped in one of his handkerchiefs, beside his wedding ring, his wallet, and the bottle of cedarwood cologne. I could not bring myself to throw away. That watch was not simply valuable. It was time. Our time. And now a jeweler was asking why my brother wanted it fitted to him. I gripped the freezer handle to steady myself. Who brought it in? Another pause. A man named Kevin Collins. He said it was a family watch. Kevin, my brother. 39 years old. My parents' golden son. Though nobody in our family would have used that phrase because it would have required too much honesty. Kevin, who had borrowed money from Daniel twice and never paid him back. Kevin, who cried at the funeral just loudly enough to be seen. Kevin, who told people Daniel had been like a brother to him, though he had mocked Daniel's job as a building inspector for being, quote, too ordinary. Kevin had my husband's watch. I asked the jeweler, has he picked it up? No, he left it for sizing. I recognized the inscription because I engraved it years ago. I also remember you. You came in to choose it. I closed my eyes. I remembered Mr. Hale bringing out 3 watches on velvet trays. I remembered touching the blue face. I remembered saying, "This one feels like him." I remembered Daniel opening the box and laughing softly, then crying when he read the inscription. Every second was ours. Mr. Hale said, "Mrs. Collins, I did not want to alter anything without confirming. The inscription seemed personal." Personal. That word was too small for the wound opening inside me. I asked him to hold the watch. "Of course," he said. "I will not release it without speaking to you in person." "Thank you." When the call ended, I stood in the frozen aisle for a long time. A woman with a cart asked if I was okay. I nodded because that is what we do when the truth is too large for strangers. Then my phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Honey, Kevin may stop by later. Please don't make things uncomfortable. Your father and I thought it was time Daniel's things stopped sitting unused." Unused. My husband's watch had been sitting unused because my husband was dead. Not because it had no owner. Not because it needed a new wrist. Not because grief had an expiration date and my family got to distribute the remains when they grew impatient with my mourning. I looked at my mother's message, then the frozen peas on the floor, then my reflection in the freezer glass. A widow in a gray coat, hair clipped back badly, face pale, phone trembling in one hand. What my parents did not know was that Daniel's belongings were not theirs to share. What Kevin did not know was that the watch had been insured under my name and documented in our household inventory. What none of them knew was that after Daniel died, his attorney had sent me a personal property confirmation letter because Daniel was meticulous about ownership, beneficiary designations, and protecting me from the exact kind of family misunderstanding my parents preferred to call love. And what my brother absolutely did not know was that Hale & Sons Jewelers had engraved the inscription, sold me the watch, kept the original receipt, and now had a record of him attempting to alter it. I picked up the peas, put them back, left my card in the aisle, and drove straight to the jeweler. This is that story. Before I tell you how my family learned that a widow's grief is not an invitation to raid her drawers, tell me where you are watching or listening from, and what time it is there. I always wonder who hears stories like this while remembering the moment someone tried to take the one thing that still held your love in its shape. And if you connect with stories about women who were betrayed, underestimated, pushed aside, and quietly took their power back. Like and subscribe to Ultimate Revenge. Some women do not scream in the jewelry store. Some women ask for the receipt, the inscription record, and the security footage. I grew up in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, in a family that believed possessions were communal when I owned them and sacred when Kevin wanted them. My parents, Robert and Marlene Collins, were not wealthy, but they cared deeply about looking stable. My father worked as a warehouse supervisor for 30 years. My mother worked part-time at a dental office and full-time managing everyone's feelings around my brother. Our house was small, beige, and always clean enough for surprise visitors because Mom said you never knew when people might stop by and get an impression. There were 2 children, me first, Audrey, quiet, responsible, cautious, the kind of child who put birthday money in envelopes and labeled them. Books, school clothes, emergency. I liked knowing where things belonged. I liked order. I liked saving. I liked promises that held still. Then Kevin, 6 years younger. Funny, impulsive, charming, careless with money, and careful with blame. If he broke something, someone had startled him. If he lost something, someone had moved it. If he forgot something, nobody had reminded him properly. My parents called him spirited. Teachers called him unfocused. I called him exhausting in my head and never out loud, because in our family, truth about Kevin was treated like cruelty. When Kevin turned 16, Dad gave him my old car because he needed confidence. I had paid for half that car. When I objected, Mom said, "Audrey, you're already so independent. Kevin needs a boost." When Kevin dropped out of community college, Dad said he was finding his path. When I changed majors from English to accounting because I wanted job stability, Mom said, "I hope you're not giving up on your dreams." My practical choices were treated like emotional failure. Kevin's failures were treated like destiny gathering information. That pattern followed us into adulthood. I became a financial administrator for a regional construction firm. Not glamorous, reliable. I handled budgets, invoices, payroll reports, insurance certificates, project cost tracking, and the kind of paperwork nobody notices unless it goes wrong. Kevin tried real estate, personal training, online sales, a food truck idea, and something involving imported phone accessories that lasted 3 months and left my parents' garage full of boxes. He married and divorced before 32, borrowed money from everyone, paid back almost no one, and still managed to arrive at family dinners, acting like life was about to finally recognize his brilliance. Daniel saw through him immediately. That was one of the first things I loved about my husband. I met Daniel Mercer when I was 33 at a city permit office. I was there dropping off documents for a construction project. He was there as a municipal building inspector, waiting on revised plans from an architect who was 15 minutes late and somehow offended by clocks. Daniel was leaning against a counter, reading a paperback mystery with a cracked spine. He had dark blonde hair, kind eyes, and a face that looked serious until he smiled. When the architect walked in complaining, Daniel closed the book, listened patiently, and said, "The code is not personally attacking you, Tom." I laughed before I could stop myself. He looked at me, then smiled. 2 weeks later, I saw him again at a coffee shop near the office. He remembered my name because he had seen it on the permit packet. I remembered his because he had made bureaucracy funny, which is almost impossible. Daniel was steady. Not boring, steady. There is a difference only people who have lived with chaos understand. He said what he meant. He showed up when he said he would. He fixed things without making you feel helpless. He loved old houses, black coffee, baseball on the radio, and making pancakes from scratch, because boxed mix had no dignity. He was not rich, he was not flashy, he was not trying to impress rooms where nobody had earned his respect. My parents liked him at first because he was polite. Kevin liked him because Daniel owned tools, a truck, and had a generous streak Kevin could smell from across a room. I married Daniel when I was 36 in a small ceremony at the Botanical Garden. We had 60 guests, lemon cake, blue hydrangeas, and no drama except Kevin arriving late because he couldn't find parking, though the venue had a lot with signs. Daniel's wedding gift to me was a narrow gold bracelet, engraved inside with the date we met. My wedding gift to him was a compass from an antique store because he collected old measuring instruments. On the card I wrote, "You always know where true north is." He cried when he read it. That was Daniel. Tough enough to argue with contractors, soft enough to cry over a compass. The symbolic object in this story was his watch. 3 years into our marriage, Daniel turned 40. He had never owned a truly nice watch. He admired them quietly, the way practical men admire beautiful things they have already decided not to buy. He would stop outside jewelry stores, look for a second, then say, "Ridiculous money for something my phone does." But he still looked, so I saved $40 here, $75 there, a tax refund portion, a bonus, money from selling old furniture. For 14 months, I built a little fund labeled D-Watch in my budget spreadsheet. Daniel thought I was saving for patio furniture. I went to Hale & Sons because Daniel trusted old businesses with family names. Mr. Hale helped me choose the Omega. It had a blue dial that reminded me of Daniel's favorite flannel shirt and the lake where we had spent our second anniversary. On the back, I asked for the inscription. To Audrey. Every second was ours. "Daniel," Mr. Hale asked gently, "should it say from Audrey?" I shook my head. No, he always says time belongs to us both. Daniel had said that after my miscarriage. That is part of our story too. We lost a pregnancy at 10 weeks when I was 38. It was early, people said, as if grief checks calendars before entering. Daniel held me through the worst of it. When I apologized through tears, because I felt like my body had failed us, he pressed his forehead to mine and said no. Every second was ours, even the hard ones. So I put it on the watch. Every second was ours. When Daniel opened it on his 40th birthday, he went quiet. He turned it over, read the inscription, looked at me. Then he cried. Not loudly, just a few tears down his face. He put it on and wore it almost every day. The watch became part of him, metal catching sunlight when he drove, blue face visible when he stirred pancake batter, clasp clicking on the dresser every night before bed. He wore it when we signed the papers buying our house, when we buried his father, when my mother had surgery and he sat in the waiting room with Dad because Dad was scared but did not know how to say it. When Kevin asked to borrow $3,000 for a business idea and Daniel gave him $1, $500 instead, with a written repayment agreement Kevin laughed at and never honored. Daniel did not dislike Kevin. He simply did not trust him. That was enough to make Kevin resent him. "He thinks he's better than me," Kevin said once after too much beer at Thanksgiving. Daniel looked at him calmly. "No, I think invoices are real." Kevin called him uptight. My parents called Daniel strict about money. I called him sane. The morning Daniel died was ordinary until it was not. He woke early, kissed my shoulder, and said he had an inspection at an old warehouse before 9. I was half asleep and mumbled something about coffee. He laughed, showered, dressed, put on the watch, and left the house at 7:42. At 8:26, he called me. I missed it because I was in a budget meeting. At 8:31, he collapsed in the warehouse parking lot. A brain aneurysm, no warning, no long illness, no chance to bargain with time. By the time I reached the hospital, he was unconscious. Machines breathed for him. A doctor with kind eyes and terrible words explained bleeding, pressure, no meaningful response. Catastrophic event. Catastrophic. A word large enough for bridges and weather. Too small for a husband. I held his left hand. The watch was still on his wrist. A nurse asked if I wanted his belongings. I remember nodding. Wallet, wedding ring, phone, watch. The nurse placed the watch in a clear plastic hospital bag with a label. Daniel Mercer, personal effects. I stared at it like someone had bagged the sun. He died that evening, at 6:09. Every second was ours until there were no more seconds to count. Grief turned me into a person I barely recognized. People talk about sadness, but widowhood is also administration, death certificates, funeral home, bank accounts, insurance, social security, employer benefits, mortgage, utility names, car title, medical bills, thank you notes for casseroles you cannot eat, closets full of shirts that still look like they are waiting for someone. My parents came over often at first. Mom folded laundry. Dad fixed a loose porch rail. Kevin brought beer once and drank most of it himself while telling me Daniel wouldn't want me to be alone forever. Daniel had been dead 12 days. The pressure to distribute Daniel's belongings began sooner than I expected. Not aggressively at first. Hints. Mom said it might help to clear some things out before they become too painful. Dad said tools should be used. Daniel was practical. Kevin said, if you ever don't know what to do with his workshop stuff, I'd take care of it. Take care of it, I said no. Softly at first, then clearly. I'm not ready. Mom would sigh. Dad would look uncomfortable. Kevin would pretend he was being generous. 3 months after the funeral, Mom asked about Daniel's coats. Winter is coming, she said. Someone could use them. I'll decide later. Of course, I just don't want things sitting. Mom, they are his things. Her eyes softened in that dangerous way. Honey, Daniel is gone. I stood in my kitchen, holding a mug Daniel had given me that said, permit me another coffee. I know he is gone. She touched my arm. Then don't make the house a shrine. A shrine. Because his coat still hung by the door. Because his boots were still in the mudroom. Because his watch was still in his dresser. Because I was not clearing grief on a schedule convenient to people who wanted useful objects. By summer, my parents became bolder. Dad asked if Kevin could have Daniel's circular saw. I said no. Mom asked if she could donate Daniel's suits to a church closet. I said not yet. Kevin asked about the truck. I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because he had finally said the quiet part with wheels. No. He looked offended. It's just sitting. I drive it once a week. You don't need 2 vehicles. You don't need my husband's truck. He told Mom I was becoming possessive. That word traveled. Aunt Gail called and said, sometimes sharing helps healing. I said, then share your jewelry. She did not call again for a while. The watch disappeared in January. I had not checked the dresser drawer every day. At first, I did. Then weekly. Then less often. Because healing sometimes means not opening the drawer that breaks you. The last time I remembered seeing it was New Year's Day. I had opened the drawer after taking down the Christmas tree because Daniel always hated how empty the living room looked afterward. I held the watch in my palm, felt its weight, touched the inscription, and placed it back inside the handkerchief. My parents had come over 3 days later. Mom said she wanted to help me freshen the bedroom. I said no. She said, just dusting. Dad was with her. Kevin stopped by too, supposedly to look at a leaking basement window. I remember feeling overwhelmed by all 3 of them in my house at once. Mom changed sheets. Dad went downstairs. Kevin wandered too much. I should have watched him. I should not have had to watch my brother in my own house. That is the more important truth. The jeweler's call came 10 days later. When I arrived at Hale & Sons, Mr. Hale met me at the counter himself. He was in his late 60s, with silver hair, a magnifying visor pushed up on his forehead, and the careful hands of someone who had held thousands of private stories in metal and stone. He led me to a small consultation table away from the front. The watch lay on a black velvet pad, Daniel's watch. For a moment, I could not breathe. It looked wrong in public, like seeing someone you love asleep in a room full of strangers. Mr. Hale sat quietly. I picked it up. The clasp was open, a sizing tag looped around the band. Customer, Kevin Collins. Request, resize larger, polish. Remove inscription if possible. Remove inscription, if possible. The room tilted. "Remove?" I whispered. Mr. Hale's face tightened. "Yes, that is why I called immediately." I turned the watch over. There it was. To Audrey. Every second was ours. Daniel. Still there. Untouched. My thumb moved across the words. Mr. Hale said, "When he brought it in, I asked about the inscription. He said it was old and no longer relevant." No longer relevant. I almost laughed. My husband's love had been declared outdated by a man who borrowed money for phone accessories. Mr. Hale continued, "I remembered engraving it. I remembered you. I also found the original purchase record under your name. I thought it best to confirm ownership." "Thank you. Would you like the watch returned now?" "Yes. I'll make a copy of the intake form and note that service was declined." "Can I have the security footage of him bringing it in?" He hesitated. "For legal purposes, I can preserve it and release it upon request or with a police report or attorney letter." I nodded. "Preserve it, please." "Of course." He made copies. Original receipt, engraving record, service intake, photo of watch at intake, customer request. I placed everything in my folder with hands that had stopped shaking. Then Mr. Hale said gently, "Mrs. Collins, I am very sorry. Your husband was pleased with that watch. He came in once after his birthday just to have me adjust the clasp. He told me you had given him the finest gift he had ever received." I closed my eyes. That kindness nearly undid me. I thanked him again. He wrapped the watch in tissue, then paused. "Would you prefer the old handkerchief?" I looked at him. He nodded toward the counter. Kevin had brought it in, wrapped in Daniel's handkerchief. I reached for it. Cedarwood, faintly. "Daniel." I folded the watch inside it. Then I drove to my parents' house. Not home, my parents' house. Because the theft had family fingerprints all over it. I need to pause here for a second. If you have ever had someone treat a dead loved one's belongings like they were available inventory, you know exactly what that jeweler's counter felt like. It was not about a watch only. It was about someone trying to resize a memory until it fit them. If this story is hitting close to home, leave a comment and tell me what object you had to protect from people who called it just stuff. And if you have not already, subscribe to Ultimate Revenge. The quiet part is over. My mother opened the door. Her face changed when she saw me. Not surprise. Recognition. She knew. I walked past her into the living room. Dad sat in his recliner. Kevin was on the sofa, eating chips from a bowl like a teenager. He looked up, saw the folder, saw my face, and wiped his fingers on his jeans. "Hey, AUD." I placed Daniel's watch, still wrapped in the handkerchief, on the coffee table. No one spoke. Then Mom said softly, "Honey." I looked at her. "Do not honey me." Dad sat forward. "Now, Audrey?" "No." My voice was quiet. That made them listen more than shouting would have. I looked at Kevin. "You took Daniel's watch." He shrugged, but his eyes were nervous. Mom and Dad said it was okay. My mother inhaled sharply. Coward. He had lasted 6 seconds. I turned to my parents. "You gave him my husband's watch?" Mom's eyes filled. "We thought." "No. Say it clearly." Dad stood. "It was sitting in a drawer." "It belonged to Daniel." "And now Daniel is gone," he said, too firmly. The room went very still. I felt the sentence enter my body like cold water. I picked up the watch. "No," I said. "Daniel is dead. His belongings did not become yours." Mom cried. Kevin said, "I wasn't trying to steal it. I thought you were giving away some stuff." I opened the folder and removed the intake form. "You asked the jeweler to remove the inscription." His face went pale. Mom whispered, "Kevin." I placed the form on the table. "Resize larger. Polish. Remove inscription if possible." Dad looked at Kevin. Kevin looked away. I said, "Why remove it?" He muttered, "It was personal." Yes, that was the point. He stood. "Look, I liked the watch. Daniel would have wanted someone to use it." I stared at him. "You mean you wanted it?" "That's not fair." "No, Kevin. It is exact." Mom stepped between us slightly. "Audrey, grief makes everything feel bigger." I looked at her. "Do not diagnose me to avoid admitting what you did." She froze. I continued, "You opened Daniel's drawer." Mom began crying harder. "Dad said your mother was trying to help." By stealing? It isn't stealing when it's family. There it was. The rotten foundation beneath every violation. I looked at my father. If I went into your bedroom, took your watch, gave it to Kevin, and asked a jeweler to grind off Mom's anniversary inscription, would you call that family? He did not answer. Mom sat down. Kevin said, "It's just a watch." I turned to him slowly. It was my husband's 40th birthday gift. I bought it. My name is on the receipt. My words are on the inscription. It is insured under my household policy. It was taken from my bedroom without permission. If you say, "just a watch," again, I will call the police from this room. He shut his mouth. Good. Dad's face hardened. You would call the police on your mother? I said, I would call the police about stolen property. Mom sobbed, "We're not thieves." I placed the jeweler's documents in front of her. Then why did Mr. Hale have to call me? No answer. The silence was not empty. It was full of things they had never wanted named. Mom finally whispered, "I thought it might help Kevin." I laughed once. There it was. Kevin. Always Kevin. How? She looked helpless. He admired it. So? He said Daniel had once told him he could have it someday. I looked at Kevin. He looked down. Daniel would never have said that. Not because he was cruel. Because he knew Kevin. I said, "You believed that?" Mom wiped her face. I wanted to. That was the first honest sentence. Dad said, "Kevin has had a hard year too." I stared at him. Daniel died. Dad looked away. Kevin muttered, "He was my friend too." No, Kevin. He was your lender. He was your occasional helper. He was polite to you because he loved me. Kevin's eyes flashed. You think you're better than me? No. Daniel was better at boundaries than all of us. That one landed. Mom cried quietly. Dad sat back down. I gathered the papers. Here is what will happen now. None of you will enter my house without me present. Mom, you no longer have the spare key. Dad, I want the garage remote back. Kevin, if you come onto my property without invitation, I will treat it as trespassing. Mom looked up. Audrey, please. I'm not finished. They all went still again. I want a written list by tomorrow of every item taken from my house since Daniel died. Tools, clothes, anything. If items are returned by Friday, I will consider that before deciding whether to file a report. If one item is missing after that, I will file. I already have the jeweler's intake form, purchase receipt, engraving record, and preserved security footage. Kevin's mouth opened, closed. Dad said, "You're taking this too far." No, I said. You took it too far when you tried to erase my name from my husband's watch. I left before they could turn my grief into a family vote. When I got home, I changed the locks. That night. Not the next week. Not when things calmed down. That night. The locksmith was a woman named Marcia, who arrived at 7:30 with a tool bag, silver hair, and the expression of someone who had heard enough family stories to ask no unnecessary questions. Lost a key? She asked. Something like that. She looked at my face. Family? Yes. She nodded. Worst keys to lose. While she worked, I walked through the house room by room, Daniel's dresser, workshop, garage, closet, office. I began making a list. Missing. Watch, recovered. Circular saw, still present. Drill set, present. Leather jacket, missing. Fishing tackle box, missing. Silver cufflinks, missing. 2 flannel shirts, missing. Old baseball glove, missing. Daniel's pocket knife, missing. I stood in his closet, staring at the empty hook where the leather jacket had hung. He had worn it on our first weekend trip. It smelled like smoke, rain, and him. I had buried my face in it more than once after he died. Gone. Not donated, not misplaced. Gone. My knees weakened. I sat on the closet floor and cried with the list in my hand. That is the part people who call things just stuff never understand. Objects are not the person, but grief needs places to sit. A watch, a jacket, a shirt, a pocket knife, a coffee mug, a toothbrush you cannot throw away yet. You are not worshiping objects. You are holding the edges of a life that vanished. The next morning, my mother sent a text. "We are heartbroken by how you spoke to us. Your father barely slept. Kevin feels attacked. We only wanted Daniel's things to bring comfort instead of collecting dust." I replied, "List by 5 o'clock." She did not respond. At 4:48, Dad emailed a list. Leather jacket, Kevin. Fishing tackle, Dad borrowed. Cufflinks, Mom put aside for Michael's wedding, though Michael was my cousin and not engaged. Pocket knife, Kevin. 2 shirts, donated. Baseball glove, Kevin said Daniel wanted him to have. I stared at the list. They had not just taken the watch, they had been harvesting my husband's life in pieces. I called my attorney. Her name was Denise Arlen. She had handled Daniel's estate paperwork and helped me navigate beneficiary transfers after his death. She was kind in the way efficient women are kind. No soft fog, just clear roads. I sent her the jeweler documents and Dad's email. She called me within an hour. "Audrey," she said, "do you want a legal letter or a police report?" I closed my eyes. "What would you recommend?" "Start with a legal demand letter if you are not ready to involve police. It should require return of all personal property, warn against further entry, and preserve your right to file for theft and conversion." Conversion? Civil term for wrongfully taking or keeping property. That sounds polite. It is polite theft language. I almost smiled. "Send the letter." Denise sent it that afternoon, to my parents and Kevin. Formal, specific, cold enough to freeze excuses. Return all listed items by noon Friday. No further entry. No disposal, sale, alteration, donation, or transfer of Daniel Mercer's personal property. Failure would result in legal action, including police report and civil claim. Kevin called me within 10 minutes. I let it go to voicemail. He left a message. "You're seriously using a lawyer? Over old clothes and a watch? You're sick, Audrey. You need help." I saved it, forwarded it to Denise. She replied, "Useful." I had seen other women use that word with lawyers in stories, but in real life, it felt almost medicinal. Useful. Pain with a file name. Friday arrived. At 11:30, Dad pulled into my driveway. "Not Kevin, Dad." He got out slowly, opened the trunk, and removed 2 cardboard boxes. I watched from the porch. He looked older than he had 3 days before, or maybe I was finally seeing the age beneath his authority. "Kevin couldn't come," he said. "Convenient." Dad flinched. He carried the boxes to the porch. Inside were the leather jacket, tackle box, pocket knife, cufflinks, baseball glove, and 1 flannel shirt. The other shirt was gone, supposedly donated and unrecoverable. The jacket smelled wrong. Like Kevin's apartment. Cigarette smoke and cheap cologne. I pressed my fingers into the leather and felt a grief so sharp I nearly bent over. Dad saw. For once, he did not speak immediately. Then he said quietly, "I didn't know he took the jacket." "But you knew about the watch." He nodded. "Yes." "Why?" He looked at the porch boards. "Your mother thought if things stayed in the house, you would stay stuck." "And you?" "I thought Kevin would stop asking if we gave him something." That sentence was so honest and so ugly that I almost respected it. "You fed him my grief to quiet him." Dad closed his eyes. "Yes." I looked away. The winter air burned my face. He said, "I'm sorry." I waited. "For what specifically?" He swallowed. "For letting your mother take things from your house. For giving Kevin the watch. For pretending Daniel's belongings were ours to decide about. For saying you were taking it too far when we had already crossed a line." That was the first real apology. Not enough, but real. "Where is Mom?" "Too ashamed to come." "Good." He nodded. "I suppose so." I looked at the boxes. "Where is Kevin's apology?" Dad's mouth tightened. "I wouldn't wait on that." "I'm not." He handed me an envelope. Inside was $220 cash. "For the shirt we can't get back," he said. I almost laughed. No amount could replace Daniel's shirt, but repayment mattered because it admitted loss. I took it. I'll give it to the shelter Daniel supported. Dad nodded. He'd like that. Don't do that. He looked startled. Do what? Use Daniel to soften this. His face fell. You're right. That was new too. After Dad left, I brought the boxes inside. I did not put the items back where they had been. Not immediately. They had to be reclaimed first. I cleaned the leather jacket gently with saddle soap Daniel had kept in the mudroom. I aired it near the open window. I polished the watch with a microfiber cloth and placed it back in the handkerchief. I put the pocket knife in Daniel's desk drawer, the cuff links in a small box, the tackle box in the garage. Then I took the watch to my bedroom. I sat on the edge of the bed, fastened it around my own wrist. It was too large. Of course. Daniel's wrist had been bigger. The watch slid toward my hand, heavy and cold. I wore it anyway. For 1 hour. Then 2. Then the rest of the evening. Every time it shifted, I felt its weight. Not as burden, as witness. The family did not become instantly sorry. Families like mine rarely do. First, they became defensive. Mom sent messages about grief. Kevin posted a vague quote about people who care more about things than family. Aunt Gail called again and said, maybe everyone made mistakes. I said, Kevin tried to remove my name from Daniel's watch. She went silent. Good. Then came shame. Mom did not call for 2 weeks. Dad checked in by text, but did not ask to visit. Kevin stayed away, which was the only gift I wanted from him. Then came the family meeting. Not my idea. My father's. He asked if I would come to their house with Denise, my attorney, present by phone. I said no to the house. We met at Denise's office instead. Neutral ground. Fluorescent lights. Conference table. Tissue box. Legal pads. Mom looked terrible. No makeup. Eyes swollen. Hands twisting a tissue. Kevin arrived late and angry, wearing Daniel's leather jacket smell, even though the jacket had been returned. That offended me irrationally. Denise sat beside me. Professional, prepared, she began. We are here to resolve the issue of property taken from Mrs. Collins' home after her husband's death. This is not a grief counseling session. It is about ownership, access, and future boundaries. Mom cried immediately. Kevin rolled his eyes. Denise looked at him. Mr. Collins, if you roll your eyes again, I will end this meeting and advise my client to proceed formally. His face reddened. I loved Denise a little. We reviewed the list, returned items, missing shirt, jeweler records, security footage preserved. Kevin admitted he had taken the watch from my bedroom after Mom opened Daniel's drawer. Mom whispered, I thought if I looked through things, I could help Audrey decide. I said, I did not ask you to decide. She nodded, crying, I know. Kevin said, I didn't know she'd freak out. Denise said, a widow objecting to unauthorized removal of her late spouse's property is not freaking out. Kevin looked at the table. Mom finally turned to me. I am sorry, she said. I waited. For what specifically? Her lips trembled. For thinking I knew what was best for your grief. For going into Daniel's drawers. For giving Kevin the watch. For letting him say Daniel would have wanted it. For wanting you to move faster because your sadness scared me. That last one changed the room. Your sadness scared me. I had not expected that, Mom continued. When I saw his things, I felt like you were disappearing into them. I thought clearing them would bring you back. But that was about me, not you. I swallowed. Yes. Dad put a hand over hers. Then he looked at me. We failed you. I said nothing. Kevin shifted. Denise looked at him. Mr. Collins? He sighed. I'm sorry. Denise waited. I waited. He looked annoyed. For taking the watch. And, Denise said, for trying to remove the inscription. My chest tightened. And? I asked. He looked at me. For once, maybe because he was in a law office with paperwork he could not charm, he seemed smaller. For lying that Daniel would have wanted me to have it. I nodded once. Thank you. I just liked it, he muttered. There, a childish truth. I know, I said. He looked embarrassed. I thought since it was sitting there, it was not sitting there for you. I know. Do you? He swallowed. Yeah. Denise drafted a written agreement. No entry to my home without written invitation. No claim to Daniel's property. Acknowledgement that the watch and returned items belonged to me. Payment of $220 for the missing shirt, already received. Kevin would send written apology. Any future contact about Daniel's belongings must be through me in writing. Everyone signed. I signed last with a hand that no longer shook. After the meeting, Mom approached me in the hallway. Can I hug you? The question mattered. I said, not today. She nodded, crying again. Okay. Dad touched my shoulder once, lightly, then removed his hand. Kevin said nothing. That was wise. I need to pause here for a second. If you have ever had to make people sign paperwork just to respect what should have been obvious, you know exactly what that office felt like. It was not about punishing family. It was about forcing a boundary into a shape they could not pretend not to understand. If this story is hitting close to home, leave a comment and tell me what line your family crossed before you finally put it in writing. And if you have not already, subscribe to Ultimate Revenge. The quiet part is over. I did something unexpected the next week. I took Daniel's watch back to Hale & Sons. Mr. Hale looked concerned when he saw me. Is everything all right? Yes. I placed the watch on the counter. I want it resized. He blinked. For whom? For me. His face softened. Of course. We discussed options. I did not want the removed links lost. He promised to place them in a small envelope with the original paperwork. I wanted it slightly loose, still feeling like Daniel's watch, not transformed entirely into mine. He measured my wrist. As he worked, he said, "May I ask something personal?" Yes. Do you want the inscription changed? I looked at him. No. He nodded. I hoped you'd say that. When I picked it up 3 days later, it fit. A little heavy, a little large. Perfect. I wore it home. At first, wearing it felt impossible. Too intimate, too visible. People noticed. A coworker said, "Beautiful watch." I said, "It was my husband's." She touched my arm and said nothing else. Perfect response. Then the watch became comforting. Not every day. Some days I could not wear it. Some days grief sat too close to my skin. But on hard days I fastened it before leaving the house. Budget meetings. Doctor appointments. The first wedding I attended after Daniel died. The day I donated the $220 to the housing charity Daniel volunteered with. The day I sold his truck, after months of knowing it was time and crying in the driveway anyway. My parents changed slowly. Mom began asking before doing anything in my house. Would you like help with the pantry, or should I leave it? Can I move this box, or would you rather I not? Do you want company today, or space? At first, the questions irritated me because they should have existed all along. Then they began to feel like small repairs. Dad came over once a month to help with maintenance, but only after I invited him. He fixed the garage light, repaired the fence gate Daniel had once fixed while wearing the watch, cleaned gutters. He never mentioned taking tools. He never used Daniel's name to soften guilt again. Kevin stayed distant for longer. That was fine. The written apology arrived 2 weeks after the meeting. Audrey, I am sorry I took Daniel's watch from your house and tried to have it resized and the inscription removed. I did not have permission. I lied when I said Daniel would have wanted me to have it. I wanted it because it was valuable and because I liked how it looked. That was selfish. I am sorry for hurting you and disrespecting Daniel's memory. Kevin, I read it 3 times. It was better than I expected. Not beautiful, but honest. I placed it in the folder with the jeweler records. Not because I planned to use it. Because records kept me from being gaslit later. The public correction happened at Daniel's 1-year memorial dinner. I had not planned a big event. Just dinner at my house with my parents, Daniel's sister Julia, his best friend Mark, and 2 close friends. I did not invite Kevin at first. Then he asked through Dad if he could come and apologize to Daniel's people. I nearly said no. Julia said, "Let him come. If he says one stupid thing, I'll remove him myself. Julia was 5'2" and terrifying. So Kevin came. He arrived with no swagger, no beer, no jokes. He brought a framed photo of Daniel from a fishing trip, one I had never seen. Daniel standing by a lake, laughing, watch visible on his wrist. I found it on my phone, Kevin said. He looked genuinely ashamed. During dinner, people told stories. Daniel fixing Mark's porch and refusing payment. Daniel burning pancakes because he got distracted, explaining baseball statistics. Daniel singing badly in the car. Daniel telling Julia's son that mistakes are just measurements you haven't understood yet. Then Kevin stood. The room went quiet. I need to say something, he said. My mother looked terrified. Good, Kevin continued. After Daniel died, I took his watch from Audrey's house. My parents knew. I tried to have it resized for me and asked the jeweler to remove the inscription. The jeweler called Audrey. I was wrong. It was selfish and disrespectful. Daniel was good to me, and I repaid that by trying to take something that belonged to Audrey into their marriage. No one moved. Julia's face went stone still. Kevin looked at me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to you, and I'm sorry to the people who loved him. Mark, Daniel's best friend, looked like he wanted to punch him and respect him at the same time. Julia said, that was disgusting. Kevin nodded, yes. And the apology was necessary. Yes. She sat back. That was Julia's version of mercy. I touched the watch on my wrist. Daniel would have hated the confrontation. He also would have appreciated the accountability. Both can be true. After dinner, Julia stood beside me in the kitchen. I'm glad you're wearing it, she said. Does it bother you? She looked surprised. No, Audrey. He loved that you gave him that watch. He showed everyone. He did? Constantly. It was annoying. I laughed, then cried. She hugged me. This time, I let someone. Grief softened differently after that year. Not gone, never gone, but less like drowning, more like carrying water in a bowl without spilling as much. I started changing the house slowly, not clearing Daniel, continuing life. I donated some clothes to the shelter myself, choosing each item. I kept his favorite flannel, the leather jacket, and 2 ties. I gave his tool chest to Julia's son when he turned 18, because Daniel had taught him how to use half those tools and would have wanted that. I sold the truck to a young building inspector Daniel had mentored, who promised to take care of it and then actually did. I kept the compass I had given Daniel on my desk. The watch stayed with me. On the 1st anniversary of his death, I wore it to the lake where we had spent our 2nd anniversary. I sat on a bench with coffee, watched gray water move under a gray sky, and listened to time tick softly against my wrist. For months after Daniel died, I had hated time. Time was the thing that kept moving without asking. Time made people say things like, already a year, and still grieving, and moving forward. Time carried me farther from the last morning I touched him alive, but the watch reminded me that time had also given me Daniel, the coffee shop meeting, the wedding, the miscarriage where he held me, the pancakes, the arguments about paint colors, the ordinary Tuesdays, the nights watching old movies, the way he said my name when he came home, the final morning. Every second was ours, even the ones after. That is what grief teaches slowly. Love does not stop owning time just because the person is gone. The seconds continue, and somehow, painfully, you carry them both. 2 years have passed now. My parents and I are in a better place, though not the old place. The old place was built on me absorbing Kevin's wants and Mom's fear and Dad's avoidance. The new place has more distance, more asking, more honesty. Mom still cries easily, but she does not use tears as often to redirect consequences. Dad apologizes faster. Kevin has paid back part of the money he owed Daniel, sending monthly payments to the housing charity in Daniel's name because I refused to accept it personally. I did not ask him to do that. Denise suggested it. Kevin agreed. Maybe guilt can become useful if given a proper address. Last Christmas, Kevin gave me a small box. I almost did not open it. Inside was a watch stand made of dark wood. Simple, beautiful. He said he had made it himself in a woodworking class. "For Daniel's watch," he said. "If you want. If not, that's okay." I looked at him for a long time. "Thank you." His eyes filled, but he did not make me comfort him. That was progress. The stand now sits on my dresser. At night, I place the watch there, not hidden in a drawer anymore, not available, not buried, honored. The final lesson is not that you should never share belongings after someone dies. Sometimes sharing is beautiful. Sometimes a shirt comforts a brother. A tool helps a nephew. A book belongs with someone who will read it. A watch may one day pass to a child, a niece, a nephew, a friend, when the person who owns the grief chooses that moment freely. The lesson is that grief does not make a widow's home a donation center. Family cannot vote on what your love is ready to release. No one gets to call something unused just because they cannot see how memory uses it. My parents gave my late husband's watch to my brother. The jeweler called me before resizing it, and when I saw the request to remove the inscription, when I read my own name on the back of Daniel's watch, when I held the proof that my family had tried to erase the most private sentence he ever wore, something inside me became clearer than my grief. That watch was not Kevin's. It was not my parents' to share. It was not a family item. It was ours. Every second. Still, thank you for staying with me through this story. I know some of you have had relatives pressure you to clean out closets, give away tools, hand over jewelry, sell cars, donate clothes, or move on before your hands were ready to open. If Audrey's story reached you, I hope you remember that love does not expire because other people are uncomfortable with your grief. The objects are yours to decide about. The timeline is yours. The memories are yours. And anyone who tries to resize what belonged to your marriage may need the receipt, the inscription, and the jeweler's phone call to remind them. Subscribe to Ultimate Revenge for more stories about quiet women, family betrayal, silent comebacks, and the proof that finally protects what love left behind. So tell me, if your parents secretly gave your late husband's watch to your brother, and he tried to remove the inscription meant for you, would you let it go for family peace? Or would you take back the watch and make everyone sign the boundary in writing?